What's up, guys? If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and much more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I got my co-host, Clint McPherson, today. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Good to go, man. Just glad to be reunited. It seems like we haven't recorded together for a while. One of us has been flying solo while the other one's had to take care of business. But hey, that's life, right? That's also the convenience of having two hosts on the show.
It is a beautiful thing.
But so we've got a very special guest on the show today. He's a serial tech founder on a mission to humanize CRM and help B2B businesses increase conversions. If you own a business and you want to close more deals, keep listening. But before I introduce our special guest today, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast and to our mailing list through our website so that you don't miss out on all the free resources we have to help you start and grow your business. With that said, I'd like to welcome our special guest today, Jeroen Corthout, to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing awesome, man. Yeah, great to have you on.
So, Jeroen, can you take us back to when your entrepreneurial journey started and what it is specifically about entrepreneurship that gets you fired up, that gets you moving every day, and that just keeps you going, man?
I guess I was like building stuff. Yeah, even as a kid, whatever it was, I would spend vacation sometimes dreaming about this weird thing I was going to build, like a catapult or something, and it would be so awesome in my mind. And but I think where it became professional in a certain sense is when I started building websites. I'm a kid from the 80s, halfway the 80s, and halfway the 90s, the website started coming up. And at first, us, the kids at school, we were building these GeoCities websites. I don't know whether you remember them. There's really basic stuff where you could have this little tickers pass by and little animated GIFs and whatever. But at some point, I discovered the joy of going beyond that. I was actually like building actual sites, you could say. I learned Flash. Flash is dead nowadays, but back then it was.
Oh, I remember that.
It was the hottest thing because you could build really fancy stuff with it. Lots of moving things, sounds. Could be really pretty. And in a way, it was way ahead of HTML. Nowadays, the tables have turned, and HTML does everything that Flash does. But back in the day,
in a more optimized way too, right? I remember that being Flash having an issue with SEO because when Flash sites were crawled, it kind of like goes around the Flash components, right?
It does.
Yeah. That's one of the things. And plus, I think what really killed Flash, well, the first stab at Flash was when it wouldn't run on iPhones anymore because Apple had decided, Apple had made these phones that would which the battery would be empty very quickly because it was a smartphone. And at first that seemed like a ludicrous idea, like a phone that doesn't have a battery that lasts through the day. But one of the things they had to do to make that happen was to stop supporting Flash because Flash was super heavy on the processor. But anyway, back then it was Flash. I would be building these things, build them for different people, for myself as well. I built one for my mom, for some other people. And that's when I really thought, like, I'm going to have a business. It's going to be a web agency. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to make all these websites. And I even was planning in that direction. I considered studying computer engineering. until I went to the open day, and it seemed a bit boring. People that were exhibiting stuff were a bit out of this world. So I decided not to study that. I ended up studying electronical engineering, which was the next nerdy thing, I suppose. But
I'm mechanical,
not as nerdy. Yeah. That's like on the ladder of nerdy. That's maybe one rung down or so.
Yeah, exactly.
A bit closer to the world. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the chemical engineers are like in another atmosphere. They're in somewhere else. Not necessarily nerdy, a little crazy. They got a mix of all kinds of things going on.
Yeah, indeed. So I ended up in electrical engineering. I studied business management next to it because I always knew that I wanted to do something with business. I sort of felt how it was like, and that seemed interesting. But then in my master's, I did biomedical engineering, just because I was looking at electrical engineering and we had all these options. So it was going into energy and doing power plants. It was microcircuits, like making chips and stuff. Mm-hmm. Or it was going into telecom and working at some kind of telco, optimizing the network and whatnot. But I decided that was more interesting to work on the human body and make technology for that. I've never done that in my life, but that's what I studied.
Okay.
Because when I graduated, they started offering me all these engineering jobs. And I just didn't feel like sitting behind a computer and not talking to customers. For me, the fun of being in business was working with other people, was building stuff for them. And I wanted to build stuff for them, with them, not be that guy in the back in the computer, hearing from the project manager or so what had to be built, or the product manager, whatever the title was. And I was really frustrated that I wasn't getting the interesting jobs, at least in my perspective, interesting. So at one evening, I decided to apply for business school. And that was a good thing to do in a certain sense, because after business school, I got a marketing job. On the complete other end, in a pharma company. I was in the medical sphere, so. And my idea was that I would learn there how a business is run, because I would have products I would represent and I would put them in the market and all that. What I didn't understand was that my responsibilities would be very, very limited. What I would be able to define was almost non-existent. I could define the brochure and maybe some website if it got approved or whatever, but it was this very, very limited subset of the total responsibilities of a business owner. So I didn't do that for very long. And where I actually learned the ropes, you could say, is in a consulting company, which is where I worked after that. I joined a company that helped pharma companies to become more digital. You see how it sort of ties together.
Yeah.
The websites and the pharma marketing and
smart move.
All came together.
Yep.
And I was one of the account managers there. I was actually the youngest one. So I was responsible for finding out what customers needed, presenting to them, writing proposals, making budgets, making sure projects got delivered, making sure it got paid as well, the whole thing. So it was almost like having my own business, but within a business.
Right.
Which meant that I didn't take the same amount of risk and all that. And I had people to teach me how things were done. And it's there that I then got the itch again. I knew that I wanted to start something for myself. At first, I spent a lot of time thinking about it, just thinking like, what am I going to start? What's the best thing? And then sometimes half planning, but never starting anything. And it's when I started in the Founder Institute that this gave me the first push to actually start something, because it's an accelerator, which the whole value proposition is that if you go through it, you learn all the things to start your business, but to graduate, you also need to actually start a business. Otherwise, you don't graduate, which was my ultimate push to start my first actual company, you could say. And from there, I tried many more stuff until landing on Salesflare now.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you touched on a few really interesting things there, from like going to business school. So would you have gone, if you did it again, would you go back to business school? I mean, would you have done that if you did it again?
I don't know. It's not, I mean, it's useful for me now to have done business school, but it's probably a little expensive if you want to start your own company. I think the investment is best when you start in the corporate world, because you basically, in business school, the value proposition is that you put down money, they teach you some stuff, and you're gonna have a stamp on you and a higher salary. And actually, one of the ways business schools are graded is they look 3 years after doing business school, what is the salary increase of a person? And the business schools that have the highest salary increase have the highest ranking. There's more stuff that comes into play, but that's one of the very important ranking factors.
That's where they get their value from.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about starting a company, probably not the best idea. There's probably other ways you can learn it. But it did give me a good idea of the basics of finance and HR, accounting, entrepreneurships, maybe to a certain extent. So.
Yeah.
You bring up a great point there, because I mean, there's a fine balance, right? Like you can go that route, which can give you that a little bit of experience or knowledge that you might have been lacking, which helps. But then you're looking at also, what type of debt you accrue, or the finances that go with it, if it's very expensive, right? Where today, like the point of entry to start a business, as long as you're knowledgeable on a certain area, is not always that high with technology, right? Like compared to what it was back in the day. And so it's so much easier today with technology, the way it is to start businesses. And so, there's that give and take between like, okay, should I go to college? Should I not go to college? Should I go to business school? Should I not go to business school? All these factors that, based on whatever experience. But I mean, I think the transition points that you had where it was all intertwined or connected to a certain degree might have helped benefit you. But like you said, looking back, maybe not the best idea, but you went that route anyway, right?
Yeah. And it helps me today. Would I recommend it to someone else? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I feel like we could kind of do a whole episode just on that. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah.
The education side of business, because it's you can learn business for free. It might take you a really long time. So, you're sometimes trading cost for time and learning something in a short period of time. I think where formal education and business school misses the mark is it's expensive and it takes a lot of time. You're still looking at a few years plus, this kind of relatively big expense. You might get like a, some percent, let's say you get a 20% pay raise, which would probably be pretty generous. If you took a really good course for just a few $1,000s online and you learned a whole bunch, you learned enough to then help you double your sales in your business. That's like a significant, and you're building equity in a business. Like you're right. It just like I think the value is so significantly higher. Unless you want to, like you said, if you want to work for another business, if you're working for a large corporation and you want to kind of like get up to the next rung, that MBA might make a lot of sense. But it's going to be really interesting because I think a lot of people are business schools, college, just, undergrad education systems are going to have to rethink the way that they configure everything in the near future, because they're going to get absolutely destroyed by just people who know something and who just teach it themselves. Right. The college around here, NC State, North Carolina State University, I've seen them advertise a bunch for a digital marketing boot camp, and it's like it's not a full 4-year degree. I don't know how long it takes. It's a fraction of the cost. So it's not cheap, but it's still a fraction of the cost of going to college. And you can learn all these incredible digital marketing skills from them, because they're realizing that, man, they got to compete with these other guys online who are teaching courses. And so hats off to universities like that who are really starting to figure it out and step up. Yeah.
And who actually offer courses you can do something within the real world.
Exactly. Yep.
That's also, especially if you go in fields like marketing, they teach a lot of weird theoretical stuff. But also if you go study something like computer software or so, they might teach you these really old languages that, I mean, it's good to have learned it, to then somehow have some basics, but it's not going to be directly applicable. Right. And this sort of disconnect is remarkable.
Yep.
Plus, if you then go out of the university and formal education system, you still have to find really good stuff, and that's not easy.
Right.
Find good courses for a good price.
Exactly. And knowing who to trust, that's definitely difficult.
And then you need also the dedication, because you also need to do it, right? If you're on a track for college or so, you're on that track somehow, you don't really have a choice almost. But when you're choosing it yourself, you need to have this in you that you're actually going to do it.
The motivation.
Yeah. And it doesn't give you the same seal of approval almost. If you're going to work for someone, if you're just going to work for yourself, it's not entirely necessary to a certain extent, because if you're going to raise money, then on the other hand, people also like to see that you're well educated and whatever. You're going to have to prove yourself more if you don't have these seals of approval.
Yeah,
all has pros and cons.
It does.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. So, so I want to talk a little bit more about Salesflare in a bit. But first, just in general, how can CRM help B2B, business to businesses generate more revenue?
In a large number of ways, if it works. The most basic way, if you would ask our customers, is just better follow-up of their leads. That's the core answer they give you, because there's a whole lot of revenue lost just by forgetting to follow up people, or not following up at the right time anymore, forgetting what you discussed earlier, not guiding them in the proper way through the sales process. That's where a lot of things are to gain very directly. But it goes way beyond that, because if you have your CRM set up well, then you actually know who your customers are. Beyond what you have in your accounting system.
Right.
You know who you're talking to. You can collaborate well between sales and marketing without making mistakes, by building up a database, if you want to call it a list, whatever, with sales and marketing together. You can have proper forecasts of what revenue you're expecting to get in, which is invaluable for the financial health of your business, and so many other things. Now, most CRMs just don't work, and then you don't get all these things. And that a lot of that is dependent on getting your sales team to use the CRM. Because a lot of other things can come in automatically. Like if you're doing marketing and all, it's relatively easy to keep the data. But if you're selling, then it's relatively hard to get that data, because you're dependent on humans who really don't like data input to do the data input.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense, for sure. I mean, I think you brought up a good point, though. And this is a friction point for me, and being in digital marketing is one of those things, is trying to get my customers to understand that their clients need to be followed up with, right? Foster that relationship. It is a huge missed opportunity. And I'll just throw an example out there. Furniture store I've worked with for several years now, to where it's like, I've tried to help them implement things, because they don't go through me for everything, but I recommend almost like a marketing consultant to say, like, look, how's follow-up going? There's huge missed opportunities here, whether it's through email. After they make that transaction, I mean, just think about so somebody comes and buys a couch, right? Or a recliner. I mean, bro, they have a house. Most of them are going to have a house, right? Most of them are homeowners. Most of them have an something to where they came in and bought furniture for a reason. Yeah. And bought for somebody else, but they got a bedroom, right? They got somewhere they sit down and eat dinner, right? I mean, it's like, the list goes on outside furniture. And it's just like, if you're not continuing to follow up with them and let them know what kind of discounts there are, and you're just posting organically, hoping they're going to come back, I mean, it makes life a little more difficult, and you're not really giving you a chance to build that relationship that's needed to keep them coming back for more, right?
Yeah. If they buy a couch, you sort of know what style they're after.
Yeah.
The couch is probably the first thing they buy for their living room, because it's not really comfortable to sit in a living room without a couch.
Right.
But then, wives start looking around and they're like, no, I need a closet there. And what about that wall? We need something on it. And,
right.
And things start moving from there. So I think guiding them through that process is maybe a big win for furniture companies. Going slightly beyond, how can I say that, the sort of marketing, the latest promo, you could think about, like, we can advise you on other stuff that would fit well with this for your home. We have some suggestions for you, the sort of concierge almost guidance. I think there's a possibility there. I've never seen a furniture store do that, for instance.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think Amazon does something similar, right? You buy something, it says like recently bought with. And so you could kind of start seeing, okay, like, I was on there the other day because we needed a bed frame. And I was like, I'm going to go to Amazon and see if they ship out bed frames. And they did. So I ordered one. Yeah. And it was like recently bought with. It showed a mattress. And then it showed like the pillowcase and everything that goes with it. So you can have like a full blown, like the nightstand. I was like, see, I mean, furniture companies, if you're not doing that, if you're not taking advantage of that and implementing that on your website or in your follow-up process, that's a huge missed opportunity. So Jeroen, thank you for bringing that up, because that right there in itself is just would be a huge win across the board, right?
Yeah. Doing it the way Amazon does it, I think it's maybe hard. I don't know whether you can get the same recommendation engine going. But if you just equip your salespeople with a system where somebody comes in the store, and either you remember their name or you're like, oh, you bought something here recently, and then you just look them up, and then you're like, oh, you bought this. Well, we have this great stuff here that goes well with it. So let me walk you to it. That could make a big difference.
So there are a lot of CRM tools out there, right? And I know we just touched on Salesflare a little bit, but why Salesflare, and how does it compare to other big names like Monday.com?
Yeah. So first of all, we don't focus on furniture stores at all. We power B2B sales. So that means we serve, like Monday.com, we serve a lot of agencies. On the one hand, we have a lot of digital marketing agencies using our software. We have a lot of software development companies, consultancies. And on the other hand, we have a lot of tech companies. That means other SaaS companies, telcos, just generally tech startups as well. Mm-hmm. And what differentiates our software from others, this is not just Monday, or also HubSpot or Pipedrive or Salesforce or whatever, is we built Salesforce from the ground up to be a system that automatically tracks most of your customer interactions and customer data, which is something we had a huge frustration with when we started Salesforce. So I told you that I worked in this consultancy and I started a few businesses. Now, when I was working with my current co-founder on another software company, we wanted to follow up our leads well. Now, we tried some of these other software systems that I just mentioned. Actually, I had been using Salesforce in that consultancy for 4 years. And I knew it was really hard to organize myself in Salesforce. Plus, I had been implementing it at different companies and saw that even though people came maybe from older systems, very ugly ones, they were at first happy with Salesforce, but then they wouldn't really use it. Now, the question is, why does that happen? And it's sort of a disconnect between the amount of work they need to put in and the amount of return they get from that. And how actually, if you don't keep up with the amount of work you need to do, you don't get the return. Yep. And in the case of Salesforce, it's even not really built for the end user. It's more built for for management. It's almost a management reporting tool and
Yeah,
a thing
so
for
they
your
can
organization to build workflows in.
keep an eye on you. Yeah.
But then tools like Monday or HubSpot or all these others, they are more built for end users, right? It's actually practical tools. Now, where they still go wrong is that they put very high expectations on you in terms of the amount of data you're going to input. Many CRMs have been lightening that workload over time by automating in a lot of things. But in essence, they're still manual data input systems. We've started 7 years ago already. We've started with the idea that doesn't make a whole lot of sense doing that manual data input. Actually, most of the data you're inputting anyway is in some other system. It's in your emails, it's in your calendar, it's in your phone, it's in some tracking system, it's in a company database or social media or email signatures. All these places hold the data you're actually going to input into the system. So we've built a system from the start that goes into all these places, collects that information, offers it to you, and makes that you can really easily follow up your customers with a maximum amount of data and information without you having to do all that data input. As that's still the way we mainly differentiate from other CRMs. And now we've started building automation on top of that automated data as well.
I love that. Yeah. That's been my biggest frustration with CRM so far. I haven't gotten into it probably as much as I should. And one of the reasons is whenever I try and I've tried a few different platforms over the years. And whenever I try and use it, I end up, it's like you said with Salesforce, it works. It's nice in the beginning because you see, wow, I've got all these, leads. I've got all these contacts. I can keep everything organized, and you organize it all in the beginning. But then then you realize that you need all the maintenance required to keep that up and keep it all organized is like, oh shoot, I got to keep doing this. I got to keep doing, maybe even like an hour or more a day just in managing a CRM. Like you said, it makes no sense. So actually that's one of the first things that jumped out at me about Salesflare is that it does automate. Like that is reason enough, I think, to give it a shot because, like you said, if you've got all this information out there, you have to manually dig around for it. It's going to take forever. But if you have that process automated, saves you so much time to where you can actually focus on delivering your service or product to your customer.
Yeah, and it's also the only way, like we discussed the benefits earlier of CRM, like better follow-up first, so you make more sales, and then all these other things. It's all theoretical benefits from a CRM that are most often not realized because people just don't use the CRM. So you set up a system to get all these things going, and then maybe for a bit you do it, but at some point you start slacking a little, and you're like, I won't input as much now. And then not everything is in there. And then you're like, oh, not everything is in the CRM, so it's not really useful. And then you input a little less. And at some point you just stop. It's just because if you don't feel that what you're doing at that point benefits you directly, it's easy, then at some point you're just going to stop. And we try to maximize the output, like the amount of data you have and how much it helps you sell and all that, while minimizing that input. So it's way easier to keep using it. I'm not saying that that everybody keeps using Salesflare all the time, but I think we're way more successful than most. Of our revenue, actually, 90% comes from active users, which I think in Salesforce is probably more like 20-30% or something.
Wow, that's incredible.
And that speaks huge for what you got going on over there. And I just think, again, like you said, I've worked with several companies that invested in these other platforms. And again, like the maintenance that goes into it, or just it starts getting time consuming. And once you fall behind, right, then it's like, you don't even want to put the effort into that's why they just totally quit using it, because it's like, I don't even have time or want to put the effort into going back in here and catching up, or they start dropping the ball too much, and it's like completely like, okay, I'm just going to go away from this. And I was helping manage some digital marketing for a company, and they're using HubSpot, man. and they were like, they had the max plan and they weren't even tapping into like 25% of what like it was doing at the time. And I'm just like, guys, you know, like you could spend a little bit more marketing, you know, over here, because right now what you're doing with you're wasting a ton of money getting like the elite plan through HubSpot. You're not even tapping in any of this stuff. And it's just like, it was just mind boggling the figure that they were paying. Cause I would talk to them every once in a while and he'd tell me, and I'm just like, what are you thinking, dude? Like if you're going to pay that money, use it wisely, or hire a staff that can manage and tap into everything that HubSpot can do for you, because it's a huge missed opportunity. Right. And so I just think, again, some of these people get into these things and they think it's, like you said at the beginning, it's like the shiny object, and they're like, oh, they're excited about it, and then it just fades. But for you to be able to keep that 90%, you know, active user rate for, you know, most of your income, that's huge, man. And that right there, like you said, when other companies might be sitting at 20, 30, that in itself means that you're doing something right with Salesflare in itself.
Yeah, it's pretty painful when you see some investments and you see the usage of it.
Mind-boggling sometimes.
Yeah, HubSpot is a very expensive example. So.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, kind of want to switch gears a little bit and think about, like we've been talking about, how you know CRM can be helpful for a small business, for entrepreneurs. You know, how you can, especially if you're selling B2B, how you can leverage CRM to really maximize sales efficiency. But let's talk about actually building a tech product, because you build a couple of them. And, you know, there might be some people listening who are interested in building like a SaaS product or some kind of mobile app or something. You know, what was that like for you? And what's most importantly, especially for like a bootstrapping startup, what's the best way to validate your idea and quickly start generating revenue?
If I would start all over again, I think the following would be the process. So I get an idea. It's probably because I encounter something myself. I'm like, why is this solved like this? I think this can be done in a better way. The first reflex you'd probably have is like, I'll just build something and then. But actually, before doing that, I would say take a step back, interview maybe 30 or 40 people which you think are the target market for this, but you can also go slightly around it. And the easiest way to get those people is probably by finding them in your own network. And then after you have the interview with those people, saying like, do you know any other people like you, which I should interview for sure. But you could also find people on LinkedIn. It's probably a bit harder to get them to invest time into this interview, but it's a possibility. But then really dig into everything around the thing you're trying to solve. So who are these people? Like for me, for instance, so they're selling. How do they organize their sales? What's the place of software in that? What types of software do they use? For what reasons? What does that power? What's going wrong with this software? And really understand that picture. Then try to figure out whether they have the issue that you are trying to solve. Mm-hmm. And try to validate whether they think that your theoretical solution would be a good one. But just asking that right off the bat is probably a bad idea, because they might just say, yeah, that sounds amazing. But it's good to know everything around it too, so that you can also judge whether it would actually be amazing for them.
Yeah.
As you will notice, people will often say that it's great and all that. But the only real validation, of course, is getting them to pay for it. If you have something simple that you're going to build, then you can ask them, could you put some money on the table and we'll build it. Many SaaS products are probably not that simple. And then you probably have to build the simplest version of it first, as they always call it, an MVP, minimum viable product. Get that back to your users, get feedback, build that into a minimum usable product, you could call it, something they actually want to use, not just like, oh, that looks great theoretically,
right?
But something they find themselves using.
Yep. Yeah. So it goes beyond just the theory of like, hey, if I built this, would you use it? Would you pay for it? but then here's what it is. Here's what it'll look like. Here's how it will help you solve your problem. Are we now still on the same page?
I think like the very first version shows what it does.
Right.
But then the second version should go towards making them use it. If people don't use a SaaS product, then they're probably not going to pay for it. So I think you can, in the beginning, you can give it away for free or very cheap at least, and make sure that it's something they use. And then from there, you need to figure out what would make them pay for it. Like what extra stuff do I need here to really offer that value? And then you go to a sort of a minimum sellable product. And it's all like in the beginning, you need to be obsessive about this process. It's really finding the right people, try to figure out who the right people are at the same time, talking to them, understanding their needs, understanding how you can make the product better to take that next step. Be very, how can I say, spend a lot of time with the customer. Don't put up some sort of trial page where they can do it all themselves and then try to look at the videos to figure out what they want. I mean, you're never going to see that. You're going to see some embarrassing things going wrong, but you're never going to get the whole depth of the experience and miss out on a whole lot of feedback. So make it a very labor-intensive process, almost non-scalable in the beginning, but try to get your product to the next step and to the next step. And then from there, when you start figuring it out, it's all about strengthening it. It's all about making the onboarding better so people can get started in a more easy way. People understand things better. There's more functionality that strengthens your value proposition. It's about building new plans to make some more money off it and so on and so on. But it really starts with a very, how can I say, non-scalable, you and the customer kind of thing, to a machine that in the end that automates all that, and where I think ideally still stay close to the customer, but you make yourself as unneeded as possible, at least.
Yeah, I mean that's what we should all be working towards as business owners, right? Is taking ourselves out of the equation, besides just being the owner of the business, because that's when you've got a true business and you just haven't created a job for yourself. So, but I really like that approach where you just start it kind of manual and you're working through things with your customers. So you're figuring out what do people really need, and then you're making it a lot more efficient as you go. Physical products have crowdfunding for, to raise money. I guess you could kind of do that with an app too, although you see it used a lot more for physical products. And that helps you generate some revenue directly from your customers in order to actually pay for manufacturing and marketing and actually launching your product. And so you always need to invest something into your business to start. You can't start a business with $0. It's just impossible, right? But you can with what's cool about crowdfunding is allows you to really, instead of getting a bank loan or instead of going to investors or friends and family or whatever, it helps you get money directly from the customer without having to have a physical product made. I wonder if there's an equivalent of that for SaaS and app products where maybe you offer, like, what do you think about offering like a lifetime program? So if you have a pay per month thing, you say, hey, for $100 or $200 or whatever it is, instead of paying month after month after month, if you lock this in now before this is ready, you get this lifetime deal. Then you use that cash to go develop and build out your app. Is that something that's doable? It's
definitely probably the best thing.
For sure.
It's what I was thinking when you were talking about the whole crowdfunding.
Yeah.
It's the closest thing, but still you will need a product when you sell the lifetime deal.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be very hard to sell a lifetime deal without a product.
So you still have to invest in that MVP or something to show what the heck you're doing. Yeah.
But the advantage of doing a lifetime deal is, well, partly you get that cash. If you do it through parties of like 𝗵𝗲𝗼𝗀 or something, you're only going to get a piece of that cash. So the cash is not going to be huge.
Right.
It's nice, good money, but it's it won't finance the whole process or so. What is really nice about it though is that you can see it as free marketing almost. Because you get a lot of people on your product that you should try to make them excited about the product. Obviously, they will recommend it to other people. You will get a ton of feedback on your product. You will have a lot of people that can review you on review sites, all these kind of things, which otherwise takes a whole lot of money to get. Right. And in this case, you get paid for it. You can look at it like that. Of course, the flip side is that you also need to be able to pay to maintain these people on your product, because they pay once and then they use it forever. You'll have to support them. There's probably hosting costs involved, maybe other technology costs that are variable and running. So you can only really do it if those are limited, of course, or if you you can easily cover them afterwards with the extra revenue you get. Upselling after a lifetime deal is pretty hard. It depends, of course, on the audience, but you're mostly going to sell lifetime deals to a sort of lifetime deal audience. Right. And these people expect that it's really a lifetime deal, and that they pay once and then use it forever. So if at any point you say, okay, now this is all lifetime, but then there's a subscription next to it, or whatever, they're not super likely to accept that. Actually, we did a lifetime deal 4 years ago on 𝗵𝗲𝗼𝗀. And what we offered was one user free and other users at 50% off. And that was a relatively okay way to also still get some upsells. Because they knew the deal from the start. Right. They knew that it is that one guy using it for free, and then if you want colleagues, you pay extra.
Interesting. Yeah. So you still lock them in, but you don't eliminate the ability to upsell them at down the road. Kind of don't pigeonhole yourself into like taking less cash. Yeah. That's awesome.
The good thing about lifetime too is you should assign a drop dead date, right? As far as like it drops, this lifetime value is only good for a certain amount of time. Like I'm trying to build my user base up so I can get the feedback, because you can make quick pivots then, right? You're getting feedback, you're adding, possibly giving a roadmap for people to go to your actual website to follow. And then like a checklist of saying, okay, complete from user feedback. And you can hone that thing in and get it as a fine-tuned, well-oiled machine, to where like not only is your lifetime members excited and they were the ones that actually got a hold of it and they're taking advantage of the lifetime deal, but now, once that thing drops dead, to where it's like, okay, now we're going with a monthly subscription or whatever. So you don't pigeonhole yourself entirely, because the people that throw the lifetime deal out forever, it's just going to bite them in the butt eventually. So you got to let that thing go so you can continue to mold things up.
I've never seen it before, the sort of lifetime deals that ends. But it's something that could definitely be tried. Yeah. Maybe it works.
Yeah, hopefully. So Jeroen, I believe we can talk to you all day, man. I love, what the knowledge and expertise you bring to the table. But if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, it could be, hey, go out and check out Salesflare today and go grab, get in this thing. But what would it be? Like some actionable advice you possibly can give to our audience that they can leave this episode and jump on?
I would say if you're someone who wants to start a business, then the most important thing is to start something now. Not next year, the year after, or whatever, but to get started on something. And it could be something small. it could be something stupid in the end. You might find out that it's nothing. Of course, don't take huge risks. Don't just quit your job or spend a whole lot of money to build something or whatever. But try to be scrappy, do some stuff after hours, maybe go part-time at your job, and just start doing something, because the easiest way to get started is to get moving. If you're not in movement, it's very hard to how can I say? If you're not already moving, it's very hard to start something. And you're not going to start the perfect thing the first time anyway. But when you're moving, you'll see stuff that you think could be better, and that will be the start of a new company based on something you started previously. So I'd say just get going on something.
Love it.
Amazing advice. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, guys, I think that's a wrap for this episode. And from the both of us, Jeroen, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your day and adding value to what we're doing on our podcast.
Yeah, thank you, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, Jeroen. Thank you all so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Jeroen is working on, check out salesflare.com. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to our podcast, and don't forget to download our free ebook about the success mindset at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
And thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.